Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Decentralized Chain. It's Feroz bringing you the latest news, reviews, and blockchain tech. So today we are going to be looking at DAOStack. Now, this particular ICO is looking to bring a toolkit to empower decentralized organizations, markets, or funds to be able to make fast and innovative decisions at scale. Now, before we dive into the tech, let's try and understand a little bit more in terms of what the actual problem is that it's looking to solve. So DAOs, if you don't know, stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organizations. And if you look in today's centralized organizations, it's difficult and expensive to get large groups of people to work together to complete a given task. And so traditionally, it has been, I suppose, governments and global corporations that have A, the funding, B, the people, and C, the infrastructure to be able to take on these huge types of projects. There are various studies and challenges that show around the complexities involved in terms of coordinating large groups. They can range from looking at motivational costs in terms of the social aspect. They can also relate to relational costs, which is basically the feeling of whether you're connected to the organization. And then lastly, you can also look at coordination costs. You know, it's much more simple to keep 5 people updated on a given project than it is to, say, update 5,000 people. And so the idea here is that DAOs promise to reduce these costs by enabling the coordination of these more complex activities amongst the participants. And so in doing so, you can ultimately erode that competitive advantage of a traditional and hierarchical centralized organization. And the way that DAOs are going to be working is by turning the current rules that govern businesses into basically software code, therefore reducing the friction in order to operate. And even better, because it is software, it's upgradable, you can modify it and institute it much faster and at a lower cost than a traditional reorganization or restructuring. So let's have a look at the actual technology and how all of this works. Now, in terms of the overall stack, it's actually broken down into a number of different modules. And the white paper, which we have, there's a couple of versions. There's a simplified version of the white paper, which pretty much outlines the mission and the values quite well. And it's quite an easy read. And then also for those who are a bit more detailed inclined, you do have a much more detailed, thorough white paper. And once again, it's not a bad read, quite easy to digest. There isn't much in terms of lots of technical jargon. So I would certainly urge you to have a little read of the white paper. Now, in terms of really understanding how this works, the idea basically behind it is that they're abstracting different layers of governance into modules so that the organizations basically become building blocks almost, and you just pretty much becomes a plug and play type of infrastructure. Now, one way to kind of describe the DOA stack is similar to how WordPress is DAOs. And what we mean by that specifically is that it's basically made up of reusable components that you can use to form your new organization. So as you can see in the diagram behind me, at the base layer you have the Arc, and that's basically the operating system for the decentralized organization, and that's running on top of the Ethereum blockchain. Now the next layer as we move up is basically the archives, and that is a set of modules that you can use to create the type of organization that you want, with the type of incentives as well as aligning the community. And so the idea being that all the individuals benefit as well as organizational growth work is benefited by having that support baked in for each of the agents or individuals within the organization. So if I was to give an example, there's a nice little diagram in the white paper that we can use. So say for example, you want an organization that has 5 representatives who must compete for the votes of all the other members of the community to be a council. Now those 5 could be the ultimate decision makers on the direction of the organization. However, if you don't like how your representative is voting, you can remove your vote and assign it to another person. So if enough people do that, the council member basically is replaced by an alternative in real time with limited friction. Whereas if you was to ultimately apply that same model in a much larger centralized organization, you could be waiting for years for the actual outcome, whatever that may be. Now, alternatively, say you want an organization that takes a random sample of people from the community, for each vote and polls them on what to do, kind of like the way the ancient Greeks used to operate, you could do that as well. So the point is, anyone can create a governance structure that basically defines the rules for how a decision is made. But you, as the innovator, can pick the one you like or create your own. But the setup is mega cheap, which basically spurs innovation. Now, if we move back to the main diagram again, another layer basically that exists is the arc.js. Now, this layer exists to create applications that leverage these rules. And finally, what you have on top of that is Alchemy. And this is basically enabling the community members to interact with the organization, perform those tasks, and submit the proposals. So this type of flexibility is really going to allow organizations to experiment with the best set of components, because it is modular, that both meet their needs and deliver value to the employees as well as the customers. And the other really interesting piece here, there isn't a roadmap that I've been able to actually find, and the roadmap hasn't quite been released yet. But what I do know, and certainly looking at the research online, is that the first decentralized autonomous organization is actually expected to go live on the Ethereum mainnet in Q2 this year. So basically within 3 months. So to summarize the actual framework that we have here, what it can be seen down to is that the framework is basically built up to be adaptive. It's modular in terms of every structure is made of small building blocks, and then you've got the upgradable component, which means that the governance structure isn't fixed. It can easily be upgraded. You can change the rules that come with it. Now you might be thinking, that's great. So what are some of the actual use cases for this? So if we break it down, you can look at it from decentralized ownership. So in organizations, you could potentially have decentralized investment funds, insurance networks, charities. Basically the value is shared between the stakeholders. And a DAOStack offers an effective mechanism for basically collective decision making, and that really enables crowds to co-own and co-manage assets and funds. Now, if you look at it from a decentralized collaboration perspective, well, modern distributed companies, content networks, and open source software projects have thousands of contributors collaborating globally around a shared goal. But with this toolkit, it basically enables those individuals and organizations and communities to easily self-organize at any scale while maintaining the accountability and agility overall. And then if you look at it from a decentralized curation perspective, well, that basically you have websites, articles, news feeds, where the contributors are the owners, editors, and users. But with the DAOStack, it's making it easier to collectively rank the quality of objective world subjects, from hotels to restaurants and shops, and basically on the blockchain. So let's try to understand a little bit more in terms of what the token value is within the DAOStack economy. Now, every time a module is used or installed, basically a small payment is sent to the creator of the module. And so therefore it incentivizes the developers to start creating more off-the-shelf modules to be used. And that way it becomes a reoccurring payment stream within the actual native protocol of the token. Now, also having a token does give you more than the ability to buy components. It also gives you the right to vote on the direction of the protocol. And the more the organization depends on the DAOStack, the more of a say holders have in terms of future development. So you've got the voting element from there as well. But there is more. It also gives you the right to submit proposals for you to be able to contribute value back into the ecosystem. And what's really interesting about the token economics is that the DAOs on the platform are configured. They connect with each other. And what this means is that it's not just a network that kicks in, but it's a network of networks as well. And that way you can start leveraging components from other members in the ecosystem too. Obviously you'll need Gen tokens, and to leverage those components from other members, you would therefore need additional Gen tokens in order to do that. And one of the really interesting things to see is that if we scroll further down on the site, we'll see actually that DAOStack is also integrating with some high-profile projects on the scene as well. So we've got Genesis, we've got Sapien Network, and we've got Endor as well. So now moving on to the team, let's exactly see who is actually going to develop and what their skill sets are. So the development team consists of around 9 in total, and a third of them do have blockchain experience. Now, from those 9 members, there is a decent amount of experience regarding software development, business development, and the team is active on the Telegram as well as the forum that they've set up for answering and fielding questions. Now, if we start with the CEO and architect, Maton Field, he has a PhD in physics and he's been working on blockchain technology since 2014 and is renowned and expert in decentralized governance. So that's really good to see in terms of background, blockchain experience, and obviously experience within the area that they're looking to actually bring onto the blockchain overall. If we then look at the CTO, Adam Levy, once again a PhD in physics, has more than 2 decades worth of experience in terms of writing code, and is also well versed in game theory and the technical side of blockchain technology. So once again, significant blockchain experience, and all of that really helps in terms of knowing that they're heading in the right direction and they've got the right people to ultimately steer that ship. In terms of the advisory team, that consists of 2 people, one of whom, which is Jordan Greenhall. Now, he's a co-founder and former CEO of DivX, and he's also participated in developing the technology behind Backfeed, which is basically one of the previous companies that Maton Field has been the owner of. And overall, the advisory team seems to have plenty of experience in business and software development. So we do have an all-round team with pretty much all bases covered in terms of being able to deliver. Right, so moving on and looking at the token metrics, what we have here in total is 100 million tokens that will be pre-minted, of which 20 million or 20% will be reserved for the employees and current contributors and advisors. What I can say is that 20% will be held in a vesting period for 3 years. So that I really like the sound of, and clearly it shows to me that it's no way near being a money grab of any sorts. They are here for the long run. Now, in terms of the private, public and pre-sale, 40 million has been reserved for that, of which I know that the bonus tokens that are being handed out as part of the ongoing private and pre-sales, that will also be within a 3-month lockup period as well. So that should certainly ease any type of dumping effect when it hits the exchanges on day 1. Then we also have a further 40% which has been reserved for contributors. Now this 40% will be managed by the company, but specifically this 40% will be paid out in rewards when the actual platform has gone live. So these will be, I suspect, rewards for contributors, for developers, creating those modules, really contributing to the actual platform as an overall. So I do like the token metrics. I certainly like that there is a strong vesting period for the team of up to 3 years. I like that the bonus tokens handed out within the private and pre-sale are locked up for 3 months. And also I like that there is still an incentive that's been kept back in reserve for when the actual platform has gone live to really promote that developer activity to start creating those modules and getting businesses to start leveraging and adopting the actual platform as a whole. Now, moving on in terms of having a look at the hype, they are present on a number of social channels. So if we start with Twitter, we've got around 1,653 followers, and I suspect that will grow as we get closer to the public sale. In terms of Twitter, they have around 76 subscribers. Looking at the Telegram community, that is slowly growing. It's almost at a steady 2,000, and I'm sure that will continue to grow as we move closer. And then lastly, there is also a forum where you can go and ask your questions. As you can see, I've been doing my research and trying to understand if there was a high-level roadmap, but clearly one isn't available just yet. And lastly, they also have presence on YouTube with a number of videos, AMA sessions, which are presented on a weekly basis as and when they come live. So they do have a number of distribution channels overall. In terms of my final thoughts, so as a project, I've given it a 4. Certainly the actual framework is backed by years of R&D. It's open source, which is always helpful as it really helps it stay relevant with all the developers coming on board, having visibility of the code, helping improve all of that as well. And certainly that drives growth of the platform. The actual framework combined with the dApp and the archives will basically transform the process of creating and deploying and operating DAOs incredibly simple. So the idea being is that they become much more interoperable between companies of companies, between networks of networks. So I certainly like that as well. In fact, one of the other really interesting elements that I quite liked about the project was the utility value of the Gen token itself. It has multiple roles within the ecosystem, so that should really help increase the demand and appreciate the value of the token and the platform as it grows as well, from voting to being a revenue generation element as well. Now, the one item I suppose that might go against the project is that it doesn't have its own blockchain. Instead, it's using and creating DAOs on the Ethereum blockchain, and obviously Ethereum is a popular blockchain, and I wouldn't see why most ICOs wouldn't want to ultimately launch their platform on there. But however, one thing to bear in mind is that if the Ethereum blockchain comes under load, then it will be a knock-on effect, and obviously there will be performance issues with DAOStack. Now, in terms of prototype, I've given that a 5. They actually have a live project on the Ethereum testnet as well, and if you go onto their YouTube channel, you will see their dApp called Alchemy, and they're going through an open source decentralized budgeting element within here as well. So certainly check that out, check out their YouTube channel. There's lots of AMAs within there as well. Now, moving back on, if we kind of have a look at the team, overall the team to me are well versed, certainly within software development, PhDs within physics. A third of the team have blockchain experience. The remainder are very well versed overall. So I've given that an overall grading of 4. In terms of the advisor that they've got on board, so once again, with the advisor, it consists of Jordan Greenhall, who basically has experience within blockchain technology and is highly relevant to the DAOStack as well. So certainly that will help push some of that overall. Now, in terms of token metrics, I certainly like what I'm seeing. I've given it a 4 overall, purely because I like the vesting period that they've got within there for all elements within there. So first of all, if we look at the team, vesting periods are 3 years. If we look at the actual token sale, well, anyone involved in private and pre-sale will have a vesting period of 3 months. So that should certainly ease any type of dumping effect once a token goes live on day 1. And then equally, as we then look at the remaining 40%, what they've done is they've reserved that for when the actual platform is fully developed, and that's really going to be used to incentivize contributors and developers of the platform as well. So ultimately it goes back to those who want to grow that platform, so it kind of creates a pull effect into the platform. In terms of hype, they are on a number of channels, from Reddit to Twitter to Telegram. So I certainly like that, and certainly I like that they got a forum, so you can actually go on and start talking and conversing with the team, asking your questions. As you'll see one posted by me for the high level roadmap, and then that, you know, in itself is really good because it kind of shows that they do have an outreach within there. And I suspect as this project develops a bit more traction, if anything, that will already help and increase the awareness overall. Anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed the review. It certainly is one that takes a bit of reading to get your head around. If you liked it, please subscribe and share to my channel. If you didn't like it, feel free to give it a thumbs down, but more importantly, please leave a comment to let me know why, so I can improve the content next time round. Thanks, guys. Speak to you soon.